Hi, welcome to the second in our series of making your retirement work for you. The 5 retirement mistakes I see most often made by folks approaching retirement. Hi, my name's Sally Boyle. I am the founder of S.J. Boyle Wealth Planning, a company that's worked with individuals and families for nearly 30 years, preparing them for retirement. Sometimes we start as early as 15 years before they retire. Now, what are the mistakes I see most often made, ones that I feel like you can't afford to make? And first is underestimating your healthcare costs. The second would be ignoring the impact of inflation on your retirement. Third would be just not building an efficient retirement paycheck, famously known as poor withdrawal strategies. Fourth would be making a mistake or just not having any strategy at all regarding your Social Security and when you should take it. And then finally, just not putting all of the pieces together, coordinating all of these decisions. And so when you think about retirement, the first word I'd like for you to think about is confidence. And that's what putting a comprehensive strategy together does for you. It builds your confidence. So let's talk about the first that I see. The first problem, first mistake is really underestimating healthcare costs. And this is not, it's very understandable because healthcare costs can be really quite high, again, because we are in retirement for such a long period of time, 30, 40 years. So lots of people have some misconceptions about what their Medicare is going to cover. They don't really realize that some things are not covered that has been covered by their healthcare in the past, their dental, their vision, or their hearing. They're unprepared for deductibles and copays. And this can be especially devastating if you have extended care needed in a hospitalization, or you have some very specialized treatments. There's going to be limits in terms of the number of days that Medicare will cover, or even the amounts that they'll cover on very specialized treatments. So some of your deductibles and your copays that are associated with these kinds of treatments can build up and become quite high. Another very complex area to make a decision in terms of your Medicare is prescription drug costs. And we do have a Part D Medicare. But what a lot of folks don't understand is there are formularies that each individual company will have that participate in the Part D. And the formularies are the schedule of drugs that they'll cover and the reimbursement rate. And they differ from company to company. So it really is important that you understand, first of all, what your medications are and your needs, and you compare them to the formulary so that you understand your reimbursement rate. This can actually be one of the most complicated areas of Medicare and evaluating what sort of coverage to take in all of the decisions that you make. We do underestimate longevity, as I said before. We underestimate how long we're going to live. The average expense for an individual is $500 per month times 12 months is $6,000 per year. And if we're retired for 13 years, that is $100,000. What we also underestimate is health stages and the fact that our healthcare costs will probably go up as we age. And so what our healthcare costs are from our 60s to our 70s conceivably can be very different from 70 to 80, and even more different from 80 to 90. So planning for those stages and the fact that that $500 per month could actually increase somewhat dramatically, especially in the final decade of our retirement. So healthcare inflation has been higher than regular inflation, much higher, as a matter of fact, about 150%. So we think our healthcare costs might go up equal to the normal inflation rate. That hasn't been the case historically. One of the most significant things to factor in is how we pay for our health care. Do we pay for it pre-tax or after tax? Because the taxes associated with the income that we need to generate to pay our health care can be can make a huge difference in the cost. For example, if we use a health savings account to reimburse ourselves for our expenses is very different than if we are just paying for all of our healthcare expenses after tax. Health savings accounts being those savings accounts that we put together on a pre-tax basis, where the earnings are, and we're going to talk about this in more detail later, where the earnings are tax deferred and our withdrawals are tax-free if we use them to pay for our medical expenses. But the other thing is, our tax bracket determines exactly what we're going to pay for Medicare. There's something called IRMA that pushes our Medicare premium up the more income that we make. And being aware of those IRMA brackets is really, really important because it impacts the actual premiums that we pay for Medicare. I think most of us are becoming really aware of long-term care and the fact that it is quite expensive and devastating. If you have friends who have experienced long-term care needs, or your parents or somebody else's parents have experienced long-term care needs. If you underestimate the cost of long-term care, you may undersave for your health care. We now are recommending that people consider that the final years of their care, should they need assisted living, could cost them anywhere from $150,000 to $250,000. So being aware of the fact that long-term care is a high probability for you, and the cost associated with them is important too. So not underestimating any of these expenses is really important in your healthcare. So some of the suggestions that we make is really understand your Medicare coverage so that you can buy the proper supplemental coverage. Those supplemental coverages are additional insurance policies that you'll pay for separately from Medicare, and will pick up those deductibles or those days in the hospital that are not covered. It'll pick up those uncovered costs generated by your medical expenses that are not covered by Medicare. Really budget for your healthcare expenses. And make sure that you look at them on differently from decade to decade, because they'll probably go up. Don't ignore the impact of inflation on your healthcare costs. And this is why we suggest people start thinking about their retirement and their healthcare long before they retire, maybe even as long as 15 to 20 years before retirement, because funding an HSA, a health savings account, can only be done while you work. The limitation is over $8,000 contribution per year this year. And so if you'd really like to have $100,000, $200,000 put away in your HSA, given that contribution limitation, it's important that you are forward thinking and begin to fund that HSA. Whether you pay for your medical expenses on a pre-tax basis or an after-tax basis makes a huge difference. So don't ignore your taxes. Pay attention how your taxes will impact a lot of your healthcare costs, as well as exactly what you pay for Medicare. Be aware of the IRMA, IRMAA brackets and how they'll impact your Medicare premium. And always have a plan for your long-term health expenses. Again, this is why we suggest people take a look at this 10, 15 years prior to retirement, because let's assume you wanted just long-term care insurance, whether it's in the form of a hybrid life insurance contract or an individual contract. You'll probably want to look at that in your mid-50s. If you are late on that, then you'll probably want to best understand whether you can self-insure it. Do you have the assets that allow you to self-insure it? Or should you be looking at something like a reverse mortgage to tap the equity in your home for any long-term care you might need? And so all of that takes planning. and forethought. Now, the second mistake we see is people don't really think about the impact of inflation on their needs. And again, as we said, we are retired 30 and 40 years. And so if we look at just a 4% inflation rate, our retirement income needs will double over 18 years. So it's important that you understand that if your income needs are $60,000 this year, they're going to be $120,000 18 years from now. So being prepared for that, because it gives us a sense of what we need to do to keep our retirement funds keeping pace with inflation and some of those inflationary costs that go over and beyond our regular CPI, like healthcare, which over the last 30 years has gone up at a rate of about 150% of the normal inflation rate. So don't let inflation be the silent thief to your income. Don't allow this to erode your purchasing power without some sort of knowledge. So what should you do? Again, because we're taking retirement accounts that are our nest egg, very precious to us, we're leaving a paycheck in the workforce and we're creating our own paycheck in retirement. Our tendency is to be very, very careful with that nest egg and not to take too much risk. So our inclination is to keep it in cash or to keep it in bonds, very low yielding bonds. But those do not keep pace with inflation. And just as an example, our 4% yield on money markets today, we pay taxes on it at 25% rate. We'll give up about 2%. And we keep 2%, which means, again, we're walking back relative to a 3% inflation rate. Our dollars, even after earnings, are not having a real rate of return relative to inflation. So keeping them in cash or short-term bonds is not the solution. We've got to take a little bit of risk. And we really want to use inflation-resistant assets like stocks, like treasuries that are inflation sensitive, real estate, or even stocks that pay dividends, stocks that pay dividends that may be held in exchange traded funds. So you really need to take a little bit of risk associated with your nest egg to make sure that you get a real rate of return relative to inflation. And you should be looking at your nest egg every single year and comparing it to your income needs, so you actually do have a sense of how much you're withdrawing and how your funds are keeping pace with what you need to withdraw based on your income needs. The third mistake that I see is really a poor withdrawal strategy. And this is just a fancy way of saying when people make a decision how to build their retirement paycheck, they're not thinking about it strategically. What we've been advised to do in the past is to first withdraw from your after-tax accounts, your bank accounts and your brokerage accounts, and then to withdraw from your tax-free accounts and then from your taxable accounts. And that no longer holds water. But if we're not aware of exactly what our withdrawal rate means relative to our retirement savings, we might withdraw too aggressively, especially early on. People tend to have a very good time in their first retirement years, and they may take too much out as a percentage of their retirement assets. The second mistake that I see is not thinking about income taxes and how your withdrawals impact your taxable income, which impacts everything else, as we said, what you pay for your Medicare taxes, what you pay on the taxes you pay on earnings for your investments. So factoring in the taxes are important, and that includes your required minimum distributions. Because again, if we're taking things in after-tax accounts in our early years, our pre-tax accounts keep growing and growing and growing. And then by the time we're forced to take required minimum distributions, the accounts could have grown to such a point that we're in a higher tax bracket than we were in the years when we were taking money out, trying to minimize our taxes. So it's important to optimize the timing of the withdrawals from your pre-tax accounts as well. So as an example, we might have someone who looks like they have a very healthy nest egg. Linda retired with $800,000. But she started withdrawing. She was having a very good time traveling, and she was taking about 6% out per year, which would be considered high. But then she compounded it with withdrawing at a time when the market was also going down, so that she was withdrawing at dollars that were going down in value in her account. And that, as we talked about in our first session about preparing for retirement, if I'm withdrawing at a time where the market is going down, that principal is not then available to us to come back when we know that the market is going to recover. So a 6% withdrawal rate, especially in years where the market is going down, would be considered aggressive and impacting the longevity of her funds. So one of the things that has always been suggested to retirees is that they keep their withdrawal rate at about 4%. And that's true at a starting point, because the research shows that if your withdrawal rate is somewhere between 3 or 4%, it doesn't really matter the market volatility. That withdrawal rate is low enough that even in highly volatile markets, you will not run out of money. Most markets will sustain a 4% withdrawal rate. But an alternative strategy is really to build up some buffers to protect yourself from needing to withdraw in those first 2 years. And if you missed our first session around building a retirement income, this would be a perfect time for you to go back and revisit it, because it talks about buffers, having maybe the first year of your income needs in cash, and then anywhere from 2 to 5 or 2 to 7 years, having those investment assets in something that is also low risk, high yielding, which might be intermediate term bonds. And so then that makes you comfortable that you can outweight any 5 to 7 years of market volatility. And so the remaining money you feel comfortable putting in the market, because you're not going to touch it anyway. You've got your war chest built in your cash and bonds. So that's helpful. And so, planning the withdrawals efficiently is also important. Making sure that maybe you're mixing what you're taking from pre-tax and after-tax accounts with the tax bracket in mind that you would like to maintain, whether you just don't want to pay more on your Medicare premium, so you don't want your taxable income to go above $107,000, or you're just protecting the fact that you don't want the excess retirement taxes on your earned in, or your investment income of 3.8%. So you want to keep your taxable income below 200,000. You have your guardrails, and all of your withdrawal strategies point towards targeting those guardrails and keeping your taxable income below by using a combination of accounts: tax deferred, tax free, and after tax. Now, the fourth mistake we see is people have no strategy around claiming their Social Security at all. You ask them, what is your strategy for Social Security? And they really just don't have an answer for you. And so the things to be aware of is taking your Social Security before your full retirement age, say at 62 or something. If you do that, you're going to take a substantial discount to your Social Security benefit. And if you take it at 62, it will be 30% of your full retirement benefit. The other thing that you give up if you take it earlier or even at full retirement age You do have the opportunity to have additional credits if you delay from your full retirement age to 70. And those credits are in the amount of 8% of your retirement benefits. So it would look something like this. If you wait until age 66, you'll get your full retirement benefit. But if you take it at 62, you'll get about 70% of that full retirement benefit. Yet, if you wait for a couple of years, you can get as much as 124% of your retirement benefit. So if $1,000 a month was what you were going to get, just to keep it simple and round numbers, if you take it early at 62, you'll get 700. If you take it at age 70, you'll get 1,240. So there's literally $540 per month difference. And this isn't just for 1 year, it's for the rest of your life. So the thing to do is to evaluate a few things: your health, how long you think you're going to live, and your lifestyle. But you're doing this for the purpose of evaluating the break-even point, because I didn't take income. If I decided to delay Social Security until age 70, I didn't take income for 3 years. So I know I've got more income for the rest of my life, but how long does that additional monthly benefit, do I need to earn it before I actually break even for that and the income that I gave up? And typically it's somewhere around 81 or 82 years of age for most people. So if you feel like you're going to outlive 81, 82, then it might make sense for you to delay your Social Security even past full retirement age to age 70. Sometimes there are folks who don't have the assets, and delaying past full retirement age doesn't make sense. But in most cases, it makes sense, unless there are some health issues, to certainly delay your Social Security until your full retirement age. So those are some of the tips that we have with regard to Social Security. Now, finally, put all of this together in a coordinated, cohesive plan. So often we see very affluent people, and they've got good retirement dollars, but they don't really have a sustainable plan. They haven't figured out all the different ways that they could mix their income sources to both provide for themselves, but also minimize taxes. They have some spending goals for this year, but they haven't really imagined what 10 years from now or even 20 years from now might look like in terms of spending needs. And so, there is some planning that needs to be done around that. There's also circumstances where, again, risk management has not been evaluated in all areas. Risk management with regard to healthcare and coverages, risk management with regard to income sources, and the probability that they will keep pace with inflation or be a fixed income, and what that impact might be. And risk management associated with investing and investment portfolio. Taking too little risk is just as bad as taking too much risk. So putting all of this together helps you think about how to build a retirement that is coordinated and resilient. And so it's not really unusual for us to have people who come to us with fairly rich portfolios, with some income streams that they can define, some guaranteed, some not. But they haven't really put those income streams going forward. They don't have a Social Security strategy, or they haven't put a Social Security strategy together that might help them maximize other benefits. For example, their required minimum distributions could be accelerated if they didn't take Social Security until age 70. And what we might do is adjust for their taxes, paying some of the taxes earlier than they would have assumed that they would have done, to minimize the taxes in later years, because we're addressing what the tax liability that the required minimum distributions might pose. And so putting all of this together, your Social Security strategy, your withdrawal strategy, coordinating that, and also being aware and maximizing your risk management as well. So sometimes your situation is complicated enough that it warrants having someone model it for you, model your income sources, model different required minimum distribution scenarios so that you can look forward 10 years and really see a well-coordinated strategy that minimizes taxes, minimize risk, and yet provides for your needs in terms of income and health care. It also will show you in different scenarios how you can build some flexibility into your plan, flexibility into your withdrawal strategy if the market goes against you, so that you're building a very resilient income plan. And then really taking a look at it on an annual basis to reassess some of the decisions that you've made. Because again, the market may cause you to reassess some things. There might be a change in the tax law that encourages you to reassess some things. So, and certainly any major milestone, like I've reached required minimum distribution age, or whatever that might be, that would cause you to take a look at reviewing your plan. So again, there are strategies to use to make sure that your healthcare costs are covered, being certain about your Medicare coverages and any other additional coverages that will help minimize the costs. Paying attention to the impact of inflation on your planning. Looking at withdrawal strategies that might minimize your taxes, as well as maximize your net after-tax income to benefit you. Being certain of a Social Security strategy that works for you and works for your entire plan. And then just coordinating all of these decisions together so that you have a tax-efficient retirement plan that feels bulletproof and builds your confidence. Again, I want to thank you for viewing this. We offer our help in 2 ways. You can reach us in a contact page on S.J. Boyle Wealth Planning, ask us a question. We would be happy to answer it. We also offer complimentary consultations in that same contact page, so that if you just wanted to sit down with us on a complimentary basis and see what we might suggest with regard to your personal planning, we can do that as well. So feel free to reach out and ask questions or just be in touch. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.